Where did this come from? Like, where did this idea of getting into the women's sports space come from for you?
To be honest, sports came to me. It wasn't necessarily something I sought out. I started Dead Dirt just because I didn't have anywhere else to create. I think I was seeking out things that weren't really working. And so I didn't take that rejection for a no. I just figured I would go about it on my own. And in doing that, I built Dead Dirt to just kind of house my ideas in fashion, since I wasn't really getting those opportunities. And then Washington Spirit kind of just came knocking. So I'm born and raised from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And a lot of my culture work has been in uplifting that area. And so people know me there for that. I have a good, community there. And so I think that was, part of the reason why they had come. But also we had a big moment with Natasha Cloud of the WNBA, where
Love her.
she had worn some of our pieces to one of her games. This was before she had left. She was playing for the Mystics at the time. And she was like, sideline wearing one of our pieces in a moment that had, I wouldn't say viral, but it just got a lot of exposure. GQ Sports like covered it or something. And she had like a big moment with it. And then Spirit saw that and was just like, who made that? I think someone on their team saw it and then pushed it forward and they reached out. And then it's all been up from there.
All went up from there.
Yeah.
Before we go to what you've created with Dead Dirt, rewind as you were just saying that you got into things that maybe didn't quite fit. And tell us what those things were and then what gave you the inspiration to get out of it. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people in life, right, who get into stuff or trying to find a career path.
Yeah.
And they're like, this isn't fitting. But they stay in it for far too long. So tell the party people about all the stuff, because it blew my mind, honestly, of what you've been doing.
Well, I think transition is always a bitch for a lot of us. And so I had been in music and entertainment for about 10 years prior to this. Like you said, I had been a DJ. I had worked for a major streaming platform prior to that. And I really loved that work. And it's still part of me. And so it's not necessarily something that I would say, oh, it's like you pivot more than you build on, and you kind of know when it's time to move on. And I think that that's sometimes very difficult because it can feel like starting over depending on what it is and what it looks like. And so for me, I think I felt like I had done everything I needed to do. And when I looked around, I just was like, this space is turning into something that isn't really resonating with me anymore. So what does moving on look like? And so I had always wanted to design, but when I was young, it wasn't necessarily something that my environment supported. My family didn't quite understand it, so it wasn't something that they could get behind. And then just none of the schools I went to understood the pipelines to get into those spaces. They weren't particularly supportive. So I didn't see a way into it when I was young. And I think when you grow up, kind of poor with underserved things, you don't really understand your pathways until you're grown. And that's essentially what happened. I think music really opened up a lot of gateways for me to know what was there. You get told you need to have a design degree, or you get told you need to have certain experiences in order to design, which is, kind of true. And just getting rejected from everything across the board, whether it's a education program to learn to design better, or whether it's a gig to start to work into design, just getting rejection across the board. And
you were?
Yeah, 100%.
So you were trying to get in.
Yeah.
And,
I was trying
and they
to
were
get
like,
in.
no.
Yeah, I was
You don't
getting
have the right
rejected.
background.
Yeah, I was getting rejected across for a year. And finally, I was ready to quit and getting frustrated and just like, fuck it. I'm going to start my own thing. Right. I know enough about how these systems work. I'd also dabbled in it enough throughout the years where I just wasn't giving it my all. And I think at that point I was ready to do that. And so I think I just decided if someone wasn't going to give me the opportunity, I was going to create it for myself. And it wasn't something that was foreign to me as a Black woman. I wasn't going to wait for someone to make my opportunity for me. I'm going to go and get it. And so here we are.
I mean, just that moment where you're like, F it, I'm going. Like that takes a lot to get to that. What inside you was like, no, I can do this? Because you literally started a one-woman creative agency on your own.
Coming out of the DC area, the pipeline is very much like get a good government job. We've seen how that's turning out right now for
Right.
a lot
I
of
was
people.
gonna say, you didn't even mention you
shit.
worked with the Department of Energy for like 7 years. I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
wait,
that's like
what?
so many lives ago. You know, like my educational background is in environmental policy. Like the Department of Energy paid for me to go to school for environmental policy. Like that was
Wow.
what I went to school for. And that's partially the only reason why I went to school for that was because that's what they would pay for. Not necessarily because that's where my passions lie.
These are like total polar opposite lives, right? Like you're going from like this government job that is going to pay you a certain amount every month forever. You're going to get a big, a pension if you work here for this many years, etc. And then
Boring.
yeah.
Boring.
But then you have this decision to go
Boring.
what I would describe it as like the most vulnerable path. I think that the way of an artist is like the way of vulnerability and how vulnerable you can actually get in the pursuit of mulling the insides of you out and to make your insides come into the physical world, right? Like I think that is what art is. And it's, I think, very serendipitous that you chose to participate and work with women's sports because it feels like you're like the same, like we got to go create our own world. There wasn't as many eyes on us when I played and similar to when Julie played. But this access that these players now have of developing their own brands and their own capability of being the storytellers of themselves and who they are. They don't necessarily have to even attach themselves to other brands. They can create their own. And then how fashion and how the authenticity and the personalities of each player have played such an important role in creating these little mini brands for themselves so that they can sell themselves out into the world in a more interesting way. Like, I just recently learned like what tunnel fits, what that means. That never happened when I was a player. And what you are doing with the NWSL is so freaking cool. And your shit is so awesome. Like, I am not a fashion icon by any means, but I like would wear it. There's such a huge gap in sports apparel between like you either only get to wear sporty stuff with sweats and that's it. Right. And like, so it feels so serendipitous.
It is absolutely serendipitous. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I think design without purpose is pretty meaningless. And so I'm really grateful to be exactly where I am. I am having so much more fun doing it for the interest of these women because this is what I want to do. And the fact that it serves them is just like that much better. Like it kind of drives it that much more. Also like, oh my God, I have really bad ADHD. So the fact that I have 16 clubs to kind of iterate across now is just like wonderful. You can never get bored. Like you can never get bored. It's just like, oh, we can just skip over to Boston and figure something out over there. Like do something in the Bay. Like it's like it's a big world now. We can iterate across.